So today I'm speaking to Kathy Solsby, an expert in helping professionals maximize their impact through strategic delegation. Her philosophy of outsourcing everything but your brilliance has really helped countless professionals transform their practices from overwhelmed to optimized. Kathy's deep experience in virtual assistance partnerships is going to really help us understand how VAs and assistants can create more space for what truly matters, whether that's delivering exceptional client service or just enjoying life outside the office. Kathy, welcome and thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Oh, thank you, Ramesh. It's great to be here.
So, before we dive in, I'd love to hear what sparked your passion for helping professionals reclaim their time through strategic delegation.
I have a really mixed professional background. I graduated and, believe it or not, was a restaurant manager for many years before moving into customer relations, recruitment, and then finally executive support, mostly in professional services. And what I found that I loved about executive support was that we can really make a massive impact to somebody's day. So if you take away all the peripheral stress that surrounds someone's role and leave them just to do their role, it is an absolute godsend. And I just love it. Absolutely love it. So I set the business up 10 years ago this year to provide freelance support to lots of different clients rather than just one employer. And I haven't looked back really. So there's 30 of us now, and
Wow.
we all call ourselves diary ninjas. That's how we think of ourselves, because it all starts with how you spend your time. That's the real key.
And I think that's huge because I think that especially if you've never hired someone before, having someone with that experience is huge. Now I know obviously that there are different types of virtual assistants, right? So let's say the assistants that focus more on executive support versus that of just dealing with customers. I mean, what can you speak a little bit more to the differences between types of virtual assistants or executive assistants? What's the difference between a professional virtual assistant and just simply one that's dealing with administrative matters?
Yeah, so a bit like employed executive assistants, and I'm in the UK, and it's sort of interchangeable whether you call somebody an executive assistant or a personal assistant. I know in some cultures, a personal assistant deals purely with household and personal stuff. A PA in the UK will deal with exactly the same stuff as an EA. They just may be a bit more junior, but maybe not. Um, so I would say that you've got levels of responsibility as you would have in any, whether you're employed or freelance. You're going to have the top level of people who are, absolutely working at the highest level with your CEOs, your C suite. They're going to be working at a fast pace. They're going to be hugely professional. You're going to be able to put them in front of anybody, client or otherwise. And then, down the other end, you might have people who do more general back office admin, and they're perfectly competent. They're really organized, but they're perhaps not as experienced as the top level EA. And as with employees, you can get VAs at all those different levels. So you just need to know what you're looking for, really. You can get VAs that specialize. So you might get a virtual assistant that specializes in social media, for example, or marketing. Um, or you might have some that are more general, and they'll do customer service and a bit of bookkeeping and a bit of everything. Um, sort of more rounded role, if you like. But what you won't get is a unicorn who does everything really well. If somebody tells you that they can, get you a million followers on YouTube, and they can organize your diary, and they can, sort out your podcast for you, and they can do that, I'd be a little skeptical. Most of us are not blessed with being amazing at absolutely everything. We tend to
And
have a
I
focus.
and I think that's what's funny because I think that when I first started finding an assistant or looking for, I wanted someone that be a jack of all trades. And 4 or 5 years later, I've gone through the complete opposite. I would much rather niching somebody down to maybe like 4 or 5 different sets of tasks rather than have them run the whole gamut. Because I think, um, based on my experience anyway, the idea of like being able to task switch and code switch and using different sides of your brain, as it were, it's a lot harder if you're trying to do like 15 different things. If you're doing 4 or 5 and they're only working within those 4 or 5 things, it's a different beast entirely. Um, and I mean, like, I mean, we talked about the differences between types of VAs, but I think where it should have started, especially given that most of the people that are listening to this are probably never they've never even thought about hiring someone, is what's kind of, from your experience, what's the real cost of having an executive trying to do everything by themselves and not having some support to rely on?
I think there's a two-pronged cost, I would say. There's the there's the financial cost and the cost to the business, which is that uh, admin will seep to fill the available time. So you end up not having time to get new business in the door, not having enough time to do your client work as well as you would like, perhaps, or not having enough time to do as much client work as you would like, or perhaps the opposite, in that the admin things just don't get done or they get done very badly. Um, Potentially, we're really good at doing admin. Not everybody is. So sometimes things just get done or get half done. And actually, there are better, more efficient ways of doing it. So the business kind of trundles along, not working optimally. And the other side of things is that if people fill every available hour with their billable time and with their admin as well, and trying to find new business, as people who are running a business have to wear many hats in a day. If you're literally wearing all of them, then your evenings and weekends are probably going to be taken up doing the stuff that doesn't fall inside. You're going to work in the margins to get this stuff done. That leads to burnout. If you're not taking proper downtime and allowing your brain to rest and going to the gym and finding time to cook food properly instead of just getting stuff delivered, then long term, your health's going to be impacted. And then you're not going to have a business because you're going to have to go off sick for a month or two to sort out whatever, ill health you've fallen into because you've just burnt the candle at both ends. So I think it's very practical business. Probably an administrator can do a better job than you can on that stuff, or as well as good as. You get more time back to get more business in the door, or better business. If you've got lower paying clients, you can take time to find better clients, or you do your client work better and you find more hours to do that client work, and you get time back in your life to have a life. So I think it's different angles depending on who it is. Everyone has their own preference for either I'll throw more time at the problem or I'm just going to get it done quickly and badly. Depending on which
Yeah.
which end you are, is the problem you'll face. Yeah.
I think, at least for me, it's the idea of knowing where or what types of tasks you're good at. I'm now at a place where I've recognized, you know what, I'm not very good at filing confirmation forms, for example, or I'm not very good at, let's say, responding to voicemails quickly, right? Or scheduling meetings. And even the idea of sending out calendar invites, that might be a quick task. You might think of it as maybe like, oh, it's just like 10, 15 seconds. But if you multiply that exponentially, it's a lot of time that you take out in a year. And um, so for me, a lot of my staff, it's really freeing to know that I can just simply send an email to my staff saying, you know what, book a meeting with this client later on this week, and then have her deal with all of those logistics. It just really frees up time in my day. Um, and I mean, you've touched on how the value of a virtual assistant, but walk us through some of the ways which lawyers can evaluate and hire potential VAs. Like, what does that look like?
So I'm going to say it depends, because it depends what you're looking for. But what I would be looking for if it was me, and I hire quite a lot of VAs for my business. Um, I would be looking to make sure they're properly set up. So that depending on where you're based in the world, that will mean different things. But I would definitely be expecting somebody to be having insurance, professional indemnity insurance. I would expect someone to have a good grasp on data management. I'd want them to have business professional level software, including antivirus. And I want them to be talking to you about confidentiality and data and understand that kind of process of, you know, not having your client information just wafting around in the world. I mean, I'm in the UK. We have, well, not GDPR these days, but whatever the UK equivalent is since Brexit.
Yeah,
But every client gets a data processing agreement. All of the team are, their systems are reviewed to make sure that their laptops are a decent spec. The challenge with virtual assistants is a little bit like counselors. Anybody can set up as a virtual assistant. And what that sometimes means is that you get, particularly the lower end of the market where they're not charging big money, you'll have people sharing laptops with their kids. So you don't know what they're doing on it. Do you want your data on that machine? No, you do not. So you want to be looking for someone who's professional, who's doing it as a career, who's doing it properly, not your mate down the road or
yeah,
person that you met on the school run. It's got to be someone who's doing it professionally, who takes it seriously, who is going to take you and your client base seriously. So that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for. I'd be getting references. I'd be seeing what their other clients are. I'd be checking out their social media profiles. I mean, probably LinkedIn for professional services. I mean, great if someone's got a really nice professional TikTok thing, and maybe you want to check it out for something from dancing. I don't know, but I would always check out somebody's LinkedIn profile. I'd want to see who they've worked with, what their employed background is, as well as their freelance background. People do change, people pivot, but for me, somebody's got to have that proven organizational skills. I mean, we only do diary management, so most of my team are ex EAs, occasionally project managers, but that's what I'd be looking for. And I would want to know that they've got those organizational skills, that they understand the tech, particularly if you've got tech is a funny one, because unless you hire specifically for a particular piece of software, you might need to train somebody to do it, and you might need to pay to
hmm
train them.
and that's actually what I was going to go into, because I love this concept, by the way, of like a diary manager and that's like a diary ninja. Can Because especially when we talk about like technology, like there's really two big ecosystems. At least in Canada, you have the Google thing, and then you have the Microsoft Outlook type of thing, right? And they both function very, very differently. Um, can you? But I would love to hear more about this whole idea of the diary ninjas and how you and what that process looks like, and talk about some of the ways, as well as talk about this whole training component of, okay, let's say that you might not have, as a business, you might not know have the resources for training. Is that something that you do as well as a service?
It would depend. Yeah, it would depend. So on the training front, I think the way we VAs see it is you either find somebody who already knows how to use that software, and if it's Microsoft or Google, then you that is not a challenge. You definitely They are very different, and certainly we have clients that use both. And if we have somebody who is new to Google, we will do some training on that, but it's
Okay.
pretty they're fairly easy to switch between. I was thinking more in terms of niche. So my first client role with a lawyer, they had this awful and antique system called Osprey, which was like something from the 1980s that was running on Amstrad. It was awful. Um, I didn't have the faintest idea how to use this thing, but they needed me to use it, and it was really complicated. So they paid me for my time to do their online modules so that I could get up to speed on Osprey. And we agreed how much time I was going to spend on it. And I did that. I billed them for it because I was never going to use it with another client. If it's something very
Absolutely.
generic, yeah, something really generic, like I don't know if you have Zero, but Xero or QuickBooks or Google, Microsoft, any of the fairly interchangeable CRMs like ClickUp or Notion or anything quite generic like that, I'd expect people to be able to switch between them pretty easily. But if you're talking real industry niche software, you're probably going to need to pay a couple of hours of training for someone to get up to speed, I would say.
Cool.
So that's training. Diary ninjaing, my favorite topic in the whole world. Thank you, Ramesh. So a really, really good diary manager um, doesn't just plonk things into a gap. They are thinking strategically about how you spend your time. So they would, for example, sit down with a new client and say, right, okay, what are your priorities for the year? What do you want to get done? Whether that's part of your, if you're the business owner, that's going to be right. Well, I need to get 6 new clients in. My turnover needs to be this, and I want to get I want to speak at 3 conferences. They are my goals for the year. So you look then at your diary and how you're spending your time, and you might say, well, okay, that's great, but you're billing so many client hours. Where's your time to go out and find those new clients? Where's your time to go and network and find those speaking opportunities? So a really good diary manager is going to strategically think about how you spend your time. They're going to try and maximize your time. So they're going to try and book in, blocks of focus time where you haven't got meetings. They're not going to do one at 9 and another one at 11 and another one at 3. They're going to try and go, right, okay, you're in meetings this morning, and in the afternoon you've got 4 hours of clear time to do what you need to do. When you're taking on a new client, they'll say, okay, how much time do you need to spend on it? Let's block that out in your diary. Obviously, it's not going to work every time because clients won't send the things at the right time. But if you've got that time scheduled and blocked, then everything else can move around to make sure that you don't run out of time to deliver what you've agreed. So they'll be thinking really strategically about your diary. They will liaise with your clients, liaise with people on the team to get meetings in, move them if needed, and just be really sensible about it. If you've got a day when you're out and about, my team at the moment, I'm going to Dublin when am I going to Dublin? Next Thursday to meet with a few clients. And one of my team is literally scheduling my day for me. And I've said, right, I want to meet these people. I don't really care when. So she would just shuffle that around to make that work, make it sensible, get me, a taxi from the airport at the right time, taxi back, all that. I don't have to think about it. I've just gone, I want to see this lot of people. And she said, oh, do you think you should also see so-and-so while you're there? And I went, oh, brilliant. Yes. Can you see if you can fit that in as well? That would be great. So they're not just task monkeys, just plonking in what you say. They will actively challenge you potentially and go, really? Is that the best use of time? Should you be doing that? Or you said you were only going to spend 2 hours a week doing this, and yet it's taking like half your week. What can we do to reduce that down? So it's going to be someone who's going to work with you as a second brain. You're both doing the same job, but they're doing the organizing end and you're doing the doing, but they're going to help you make that work. So that is what I think of as a true diary ninja.
Uh, that's brilliant. I think that finding that person, it's magical when it happens.
Yeah.
Because and I think that a lot of people, those types of things don't really come naturally to a person. It's
No.
really it's really one of those. It's really sort of like the unicorn person where, again, they're not supposed to try and do everything. They're literally tasked with managing a diary.
Yeah.
I like
Well,
to
and I
call.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I think the other challenge is when we manage our own diaries, we say yes too easily because it's quicker. Somebody will say, "Can you do Wednesday at 3?" And you look down, you see a gap, yep, because it saves the backwards and forwards, which takes time. And actually, Wednesday at 3 might not be the optimal time for that meeting. You might have got a block of focus time. It might be your only meeting. Somebody else will breathe, look, and go, "Actually, could you make it 4?" They'll do that because that's their job. It's not our job. So yeah, sorry,
And
I interrupted you.
no, it's okay. I mean, like, I think that, I jokingly call my person like the chief of staff, right? Because she's literally there to vet, and if I need something to be done And especially, they're also kind of sort of like an accountability partner,
Yeah.
because again, like again, so for us, we have a quarterly meeting at the end of each quarter where we set out goals for the next quarter, and having someone that knows that comes in with that set of eyes and that set of knowledge, and they say, hey, you know what, you want to do this in this quarter, these are things that you've done, let's plan this out. And you give them tasks, like you can actually set up a whole task list. And that's again the magic of, and but I love, you should, by the way, trademark that. That's a great thing, Diary. I'm telling you,
Diary
it's
Ninja.
great.
Yeah. Diary
um
Ninja.
but
Yeah, and most of our VAs would share a task list with the person they support, and
cool.
even share a prospect list of my lovely lawyer. When I worked for him, he used to call me the nagging witch of his prospect list, which I took to be a compliment.
It is a
Um,
compliment, absolutely.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so
um
because
so I
we remind you. Yeah.
Uh, w- so we've talked about some of the benefits around staffing. What are some, and I think you already touched on some red flags like the confidentiality and the software pieces. What are some of the key warning signs to watch out for when choosing someone?
I think it depends what you're looking for, um, and it depends on your expectations. So us VAs generally work with multiple clients. There's in the UK we have to, for tax reasons, have multiple clients. Otherwise, it gets very complicated. But most VAs will switch between multiple clients, so we are not kind of at your beck and call
Hmm.
9 to 5, and definitely not 24/7. There's an interesting myth with VAs that we somehow aren't real and therefore work 24/7. We really don't. We are humans, and we sleep, and we get tired, and we get really grouchy if people message us at 8 o'clock at night on WhatsApp. I can tell you. Um, so
Rightfully so. Rightfully
yeah,
so.
boundaries, boundaries. So I suppose some of the red flags are, if they can't provide references, I'd be worried. If they're brand new to the game, then it might be a risk. It might be a good punt. If they're brilliant and you get them before anybody else gets them, then they've got more capacity. Um, I would always be wary of people who promise the earth. You know, how VAs work compared to an employed EA usually is that we bill very much like lawyers on a timesheet, right? We click in, we click out. So you guys get how that works, which makes us really efficient because you're paying for focused work time only. You're not paying for us to go and make a cup of tea, wander out with the dog at lunchtime. None of that. It's focused on time. And that means we flick between clients. So I suppose one thing is to be aware that you're not necessarily going to get an instant response from a VA. So with diary management, that can be a challenge if people are quite needy. Um, Generally, people who run their own businesses are very grown up and very sensible, and they're perfectly capable, if there's a crisis, of going, oh, I think I can probably postpone that meeting myself. My
Yeah.
VA is not around at the minute. I can do that. We tend to have more of an issue where we've got people who are used to an employed PA who sat outside their door all day, and they kind of, God forbid, take a lunch break. But yeah, I would definitely be checking on the tech. I'd be making sure they've got some solid experience in being a VA and being a freelancer, because you don't want to have to teach them that. That's they what you're buying is a service. That's the difference with an employee. With an employee, you do have to bring them in, you have to train them. You have to train a VA to a certain extent because you are an individual and your business is unique, and they are not going to know about you and your business and your goals and your culture and your clients. You're going to have to teach them that stuff, but you shouldn't have to teach them how to be a virtual assistant. They should know that already, and they're charging you a service, um, hopefully in an hourly way. It might be a package, but they should understand the basics of that. So I'd be really wary if people start asking you peculiar questions,
Hmm.
about how it's going to work, because I know they should be bossing you a bit at this point. They should
Oh,
be telling you
absolutely.
how to work and
Yeah.
sending you a contract, which is always
Yeah.
horrible, by the way. Sending lawyers a contract, every time it makes me want to throw up having to send a lawyer a contract.
Um, So, I mean, obviously, we're living in a globalized world, and I think that there's always this sort of idea of, well, oh, this person is X dollars, this person is Y dollars, Y costing, what's the difference? I mean, can you talk a little bit about why investing in real high quality support is so crucial, especially if you're working across boundaries and if you're working internationally and why is it so crucial for your long-term success as a business owner?
Yeah, so I would say you you're there's that famous trifecta, isn't there, of cheap, good, and fast. And
You only
really,
have
what
two.
you want is good and fast. You don't want
Yeah.
cheap. You can go cheap, and probably you'll end up having to check whatever comes back, possibly redo it, or you're going to have to train somebody. And the lower down the rankings you go, if you like, the more task basic it is. So if you need some, if you say you ran a product company and you had a website and you needed 1,000 photos uploading, assuming AI couldn't do that, which I'm sure it can, but assuming it couldn't, you don't need somebody particularly expensive who's just going to upload hundreds of photos. It's a very basic task. But at the top end, where you want someone who is going to interact with your clients, who's going to think for themselves, who's going to problem solve, who's going to be a second brain for you, challenge you, and be a brainstorming partner. Having somebody to talk to when you're a lone business owner is absolutely invaluable. You need somebody smart for that. You don't necessarily need a lawyer, but you need someone smart. So hitting high, you use less time. I would say you're better to have 10 hours a month of a really good VA than 30 hours of a pretty mediocre, not very good VA, which would probably
Yeah,
cost less.
absolutely. No, and I think that there's this idea that, yeah, sure, I can train them, but that's a cost which you don't really need to bear at a higher
Yeah,
cost, right?
yeah,
What you're when you are investing in a quality executive assistant, you're actually, and I think we talked about this before, is the idea of you can finding people who can exercise good judgment is actually pretty hard to find.
yeah,
And you're actually investing in someone that has taken the time to learn about you, your priorities, how you operate, and then gives you gives and takes some of the burden off your shoulders and puts it onto theirs. And
yeah,
that's invaluable.
yeah,
And especially if you're, again, someone that can manage my calendar, can tell people no that I want to say no to, but I don't. Making sure that I'm on top of things and making sure that I don't need to worry about, oh, where's my tickets? It's already there in my calendar. Or where's my court date? It's already there in my calendar. That
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
support is invaluable because it allows you the freedom to do other stuff with your time,
yeah.
right?
One of my clients calls it mental load, reducing the mental load. Because actually we're not designed as humans to hold an awful lot of stuff in our heads, particularly
Absolutely.
things to remember. Our brains are for processing, they're not for storage. So if somebody else is helping you with the storage, and most VAs are brilliant at having, because we might have 8 clients and we know everybody's diary, we know everyone's clients, we know everyone's everything. We can't hold that in our heads either, but we will have great tech systems that will make us look like we're holding it in our heads. So one of my clients, she always likes, goes, God, you're so good. You always remember. She's like, I use Boomerang. So it just pings back into my inbox when I need to remind you about it. I haven't remembered that. I use the tech to make it
Right.
work, to make me look good and to make you look good. Because you're now saying to somebody at exactly the right moment, oh, how did that event go?
That's
When
amazing.
we spoke last month, you said, you know, we'll use that tech to help us. And again, that's why having someone with the right tech and the understanding of the tech is quite important. Don't need to be a tech VA by any stretch, but use the tools that are out there, right? Um,
That's brilliant.
and yeah,
So
yeah,
let's conclude with this talk with understanding how to build sort of like a lasting partnership with staff. I mean, in your experience, I mean, you've been doing this for over a decade. I mean, what are some of the key elements that create a really successful long-term relationship between the parties.
I think the one thing, and you could say it 3 times because it's that important, is communication. So communication, communication, communication. I think being really good at communicating, see, I can't communicate. Apparently, it's late for me.
It's all
Being
good.
really good at communication is vital. Um, we usually have weekly calls with our clients, particularly when we're doing diary management, because priorities change. It's like what's big for you this week, what's come in, what do I need to know. Having that weekly touch point is really useful for building a relationship as well, as above using Slack or using email or whatever
Mhm.
your communication system would be. And the other thing with communication is have an agreed communication plan. So for example, um, email is for everything unless it's urgent, in which case send me a WhatsApp. That might be a communication plan, or it might be
Cool.
all new tasks go via the CRM system. Emails are email. If it's urgent, WhatsApp. What you want to absolutely avoid doing is pinging your virtual assistant in Slack, in email, on Teams, on Google
Mm.
Hangouts, on Skype if it still exists. You know, absolute myriad of different channels, because then tasks get lost. WhatsApp is the very devil as far as I'm concerned for this. And clients slide into bad habits, I've discovered, with WhatsApp. So you give them the priority that says, right, if it's time sensitive, I might be on another client or in a meeting, WhatsApp me. And they'll do that, and they'll do that really well. And then they'll think, oh, while I'm here, can I just ask about that meeting next week? And you go, it's not urgent, is it? So we have to train our clients very much. So, that email about this meeting next week came in at 7 o'clock at night. I think I studiously ignored it until the next working day, and then I emailed back. So it's down to us to manage those boundaries as well. But things that are sent to the wrong communication channel can get lost. And that's what you want to
Mhm.
avoid doing. And also, you're bombarding somebody from all different directions, which is really, I think we may have 8 clients. Like, some might have two, some might have 8, some might have 12. You imagine every
Wow.
single one of those clients bombarding you from, Facebook message here and a text there and a phone call here. It's too much. So communication, communicating well, communicating regularly, and communicating within the boundaries that have been agreed is absolutely, I would say, key to a successful relationship. um, and we can do our bit as well, and that's not to
Yeah.
say that if there's a crisis, if somebody rings me out of our organized system, I know that that's important because they never ring me, because they've been
Right.
trained not to ever ring me, right? So I will know that there's a crisis. So I will always pick it up and I'll always deal with it, whenever it is, pretty much,
Mhm.
because that's how I'm built. If I had clients that regularly rang me at 9 o'clock at night, I would just put my phone in the freezer. I just, because I can't deal with it. So yeah, having really good communication, being really strict with yourself, and your methodologies, I would say, um, and review them, because what works in year one might not work in year two. It's like, well, do you know what? We were using email, but now we're using Teams more as a group, so perhaps we should move to Teams. Just
Yeah.
review and refresh, and make sure you're having those open conversations about how it's going. Is it working? Is it not working? Once the communication's there, which quite often is communication about communication, everything else generally falls into place, I would say.
So that's great. I mean, I like so for me, for example, or for our team, we have this policy of anything internal going to Teams. If
Yeah,
it's anything external, go to emails. But I think
yeah,
I really like this idea of having remote communication. I mean, how do you structure expectations? I mean, it seems that there's two pieces. There's a communications component, but there's also an expectations component saying, look, my VA is not going to be available between X and Y. I mean, how do you structure those expectations? Is it a one-time thing? Is it an ongoing thing? Like you mentioned training. I mean, like, what does that type of things look like?
yeah. I would call it, training is a strong word. I've used other words for it in the past as well. When we first contract with a client, one of the things that we will talk about is our availability and our turnaround times on things. Diary management is slightly different and is a bit more complex than your normal VA stuff because it tends to be a bit more time sensitive. Um, but a lot of VA is project work, and you might have a turnaround time of 2 days potentially because nothing is that time sensitive. And to be honest, even if clients send us 20 tasks in a day, the beauty of having a really smart EA is that they are going to work out what's urgent out of that and what can be left till next week, and they're going to pace it and prioritize it in a sensible way. So we would have a conversation with the client up front, spell out our working hours, remind them that we're not sat at our desk waiting for their call all the time. Sometimes we might be in another meeting. A lot of VAs become VAs because they're parents and they want to, go and see a football match or whatever through the day. So we would have those conversations up front, and it's really important if there's something very specific. If you know that you have a webinar every Wednesday at 3 and you really need your VA to be there helping on the Zoom meeting, then you're going to be wanting to talk about that when you're first interviewing the VA and going, actually, there's this thing, I do it every week. Are you around on Wednesday at 3? Or if you have a full team meeting, for example, and it falls the same time and you want them to take actions, they've got to be available at that time. So anything that's kind of a deal breaker like that, you'd be wanting to talk to them up front about it. Some people don't work 5 days in a week, for example. If that is an issue for you, then you need to know that up front. You
Right.
would hope the VA would say, do you know what, I don't work Fridays. And when you're having that kind of interview first conversation, you go, actually, do you know what, I really can't have things sat in an inbox for a
Yeah.
day. That's not going to work for me. It depends on the type of work you're doing and what you're going to have them respond to as to whether that's going to fit. We have people in different time zones, and again, I can only put them on specific jobs because for some jobs the turnaround time just doesn't work.
Isn't
uh,
there? Yeah.
yeah yeah
Uh, so, what are the systems? I mean, you've talked about this idea, and I think we live in a world where we're so used to instant. If I send this task, it's done yesterday.
yeah
And again, I think that's one of the things where it's just this mentality which is just so toxic when it comes to building out a relationship with the VA, or this idea that, oh, only I can do this the best thing possible. I want to micromanage my VA.
yeah
What are the systems that best support sustainable collaboration?
So you do have to build trust. So actually, one of my favorite things for this, which is unbelievably simple, is the new, well, not that new now, the hand gestures on Microsoft, the sort of thumbs up type thing.
Yeah.
I find them really helpful because when you give your VA a task, you until you get to know them and you trust them and you know that they've got this, you're going to want an acknowledgement of that task, that it's been received, even though they might not be doing it that very second. You want to see they've got it and they're on it.
Yeah.
Usually a thumbs up is perfect for that. In the olden days, or on Google, you might reply and go, yeah, got it, on it, thanks, something like that, just as an acknowledgement that I have everything I need, I'm working on this. So I think in the early stages, the VA should absolutely be copying you into things, checking if they're not sure. If there's something in the diary and you go, oh, could I move that? Is that safe to move? I don't know. I'll check. In the early stages, there should be a lot of communication about what needs doing, where, when, and how. And then as you start to trust your VA more, you should have you shouldn't need to be involved. Some people just love, after years and years and years, they still want to be copied into everything. And, that's fine, but it's going to clog up your inbox no end. And I
Mhm.
would argue that that's kind of painful and defeats the object a little bit. But maybe you say to your VA, well, tell you what, copy me in on the first one. And then once the date's agreed, just ping me and let me know. And you
Yeah.
might use a task system. So, people use all sorts of things. But if there's a task, something like Trello is even really nice, very simple. And you just have a, to do and then doing and then done. And, at the end of the week, your assistant might even just screenshot that Trello board and go, right, there you go. That's what's done. That's what's outstanding. And you said you were going to come back to me on this and you haven't. So can you please, just keeping on top of that and having a weekly review of where things are at, I think is really vital. Again, you might move away from it after after 6 months or so when you've bedded in, but it's really useful to reassure. And also, you've hopefully got a view of the timesheet as well, so you can see what your VA is actually doing and when they're doing it. And on the red flags, they should be using a proper online timesheet, not like an Excel spreadsheet in a phone and
Yeah.
a good wind.
Um, this is
You
this
want to
is
be
great.
seeing an online timesheet.
Um, this has been fantastic. I'm going to move on to some lightning round questions. And you talk about Trello, your go-to productivity tool.
Oh yeah. Oh, there are so many, Ramesh. There are so many. My go-to productivity tool. Um, Really weirdly, one of my favorites at the moment, I've been using it for years, is a thing called Text Expander. And
Oh yes.
if you don't work on a Mac, you need Text Expander. Yeah, it does what Quick Keys, or I think it's called Quick Keys on a Mac does, which it just means that you can do a shortcut and it will fill stuff in. And I
Yeah.
use it to create whole template emails. I use it for my name. I use it for a client's name that I can never spell properly. I use it for just things like, kind regards, Kathy, or if you have any queries, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Anything like that I would normally type out, I just have a quick, XZY.
That's amazing. So we
Yeah.
use a thing called auto hotkey, which is same premise. It's the idea of like you type in 3 or 4 letters, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
a full letter goes. We've got a whole course on that. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. Just as a aside, I'm surprised you didn't mention like ChatGPT or like Claude or whatever it is.
Not
Is that a thing?
really. Yes. Yeah, interestingly, we don't use it with clients. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
m- Mainly because we haven't got round to having a policy on it. So, but also we don't do content creation. So, diary management, there is AI in diary management, and we absolutely use not for our clients, but for ourselves. We all use something like Calendly, or I use VimCal, or Microsoft Bookings, some sort of system, which is effectively AI. Our clients' diaries, if
Yeah.
we started doing that, it would honestly break them. We use them. We use them discreetly. So if we work with coaches, for example, we might have a series of coaching sessions that need to go in across multiple time zones, and we know when they need to fall, and they're going to be quarterly and all that. We might set up a very specific AI calendar booking tool to send to people for that
Cool.
specific task. But what you wouldn't want to do in a very, very complex, fast moving diary is have people just willy nilly being able to pop stuff in when they felt like it. That would just be awful.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
would,
Yeah.
yeah, it would really ruin all our hard work. So we don't use it for clients in that way, but we do use it where it's appropriate. Where you've got the
Cool.
human element to make it work properly. It's perfect. I use it for myself. I use it for prepping my podcast, and I
It's
use
good.
it for,
Yeah, it's curious.
yeah, all of those.
Most common delegation mistake.
Micromanaging.
Yeah.
Micromanaging. Yeah. I had one client once who I fired after 2 weeks because we exchanged something like 20 emails about booking in a 20-minute call with somebody not very important.
Fun times.
And fun times. It really was. It was like, yeah, if you can't even relinquish a very not very important call to me to just put it somewhere in your diary without breaking it, I think probably this isn't gonna work. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a short-lived experiment. Yeah, you have to let go. You have to give a bit of
Mhm.
trust. Put in boundaries, put in guidance. You don't just literally throw it over the wall and hope for the best. There's got to be there's got to be some background, but clinging on tightly to every last thing it is not the way to make it work. And when you're employing a service provider, or bringing in a freelancer as opposed to hiring an employee, um, we always use the pretty woman phrase. We say who, we say how, we say how much,
Yeah.
and it is kind of, we do it how we do it, and you are paying us for our experience in knowing how to do it well. So
That's the
you
value.
kind of,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, you don't really get to say how. If you need to say how and you need to watch somebody do it, then you probably need to employ somebody because it's a
Yes.
different role.
Yeah, it's a dirty service. And lastly, what energizes you most about your work?
Oh, the people. We have such fabulous clients. I love them. Um,
Oh,
yeah, and they are
amazing.
carefully chosen. We don't work with everybody, but those we do work with are just brilliant. They are smart, they are fun, they are really much smarter than me. Very clever people, and but they're the kind of people that you would happily spend time with, and they really respect what we do, and we respect what they do, even though it's very different. So yeah, people
Cool.
every day. My team are lovely. We have the best fun, considering we're all virtual and we don't meet up. Um, we have some brilliant conversations. So
That's
people,
amazing.
clients, and team. Yeah, all the people.
Uh, Thank you so much for sharing so much of your time and insights. So I know that you've got a book, and which can you tell us more a little bit more about the book and also how people can connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So the book is very similar to our conversation this evening, which is how to work with a virtual assistant, outsource everything but your brilliance. So it kind of takes you through, first of all, is a virtual assistant the right resource for me? Do I have enough work? Do I have too much work? Should I be looking for a generalist or a specialist or something else? How many hours do I need? It takes you through the whole kind of process of then finding somebody, how not to hire a VA by, going on LinkedIn and going, "Hey, I need a VA," and having 3 million people tag in everyone they've ever met. So it takes you through that whole kind of process. It's got some templates in there that you can use to create a job spec, to create some questions. And there's a section in the back by a UK legal expert. So not necessarily relevant to all countries, but definitely will get you thinking about, particularly with law, what are the regulatory things that I should be looking for? And, when I'm outsourcing, how do I do it safely? Because that's, really important.
Amazing. And people can connect with you. I guess you're on LinkedIn, which I'll make sure that's in the description.
Yes, I am on LinkedIn, and you'll find me on Amazon for the book, and the website is personally virtual. So any of those places you will find me.
Amazing. Kathy, thank you so much. Our conversation, especially about this Diary Ninjas, which is still like really captivating me. It's
My favorite.
really well. It's the fact that there is a service slash people out there that can take what my vision for the next 3, 6, 12 months, and you've got them trained on a process to help me achieve that goal. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much for the conversation. I really appreciate it,
Oh,
and
it's been lovely.
we'll chat soon. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Ramesh.